I was asked to explain the Abraham Hicks concept of the grid. So this is what I want you to picture. This is how I imagine it in my mind. Have you ever seen one of those video game screens where it's black, or maybe there's like some stars? It can sometimes have a galaxy theme, but basically it's just a blank screen, and then you get like the white line checkers that are like the floor in this open space. Okay, so let's imagine that all of the time and space that exists out ahead of you is completely blank. And what determines what materializes in that blank space is dependent on your thoughts, your emotions, your expectations, and your standard baseline. So that black grid, you can also think about it as like the astral plane. It's the energetic blueprint where things are concocted before they materialize. So when Abraham Hicks is talking about do grid work, it's you need to set the tone, set the emotional and vibrational tone for what will then materialize. So this can be done, I mean, if you were in Once Upon a Time, you got a gazillion ways to do this. This is pretty much all we did in Once Upon a Time, right? Was yes, some emotional work, but when we were going into storytelling, inner dialogue, mental rehearsal, this is all grid work. So any emotional preparation or vibrational preparation that you do will materialize. Now, some stuff we want to keep the same. Like you have a lot of expectations about your home, the environment around you, the grocery stores, the places that you frequent, that you want to be stable. So we have a lot of expectations that provide continuity. You know, being on Earth, there's a certain level of consistency and stable materialization that has been built through lots and lots and lots of collective expectation that makes it easier for, navigational purposes, if you will. It makes the human experience more fun, more enjoyable, more tangible and tactile. But there are so many elements of it that are variable that we get to sway. We get to determine what comes next. So this is kind of how Abraham Hicks would describe this. Doing grid work would look like this. You wake up in the morning, you get a cup of coffee, you eat some breakfast, you meditate, and then maybe you go right into making a list of positive aspects. Positive aspects as in things you like. You just start focusing on all the things that you like, all the things that you enjoy, all the things that you appreciate, things that you love. You come out of the gate doing that. Well, what you've done is you have set the tone for how the grid will fill in moving forward. Now it could change, but you've set the wheel in motion, so to speak, very early on in the day. So doing things like that more often is doing grid work. This is one of the big things that I noticed when I did my first round of Apex is I daydreamed a lot, but honestly, I think that people underestimate how much their imagination will go and how much their imagination will produce when they're not plugging into all of these other sources of pictures, so to speak. So let's say if you turn on the news, they're showing you things about the bad economy, all of these horrible murders that have happened, all of these catastrophic, devastating stories, and the bad weather to boot. Okay, you've now set your grid for all that. Okay, that's what's going on. So when you consume, it puts you in a position where you are not constructively setting the grid to what you want. A lot of people don't have very good control over their imagination. So if you're in a state of anxiety, you don't have control over your imagination in that moment. And this is one of the reasons why people numb, is they'll get a negative picture, a negative emotion, a negative story, and then they go, uh-oh, I need to numb. So it's never metabolized, and then that ends up becoming a default baseline, which is a problem, because then you don't have control over the grid. So you are not conjuring the images that you want to see materialized, which is what the grid will do. If you start throwing a whole bunch of, let's say, positive pictures in the grid, if you start imagining it, it will materialize. But you've got to hold it long enough for it to pop into 3D. And I want to make this clear. It's not about things taking time. It has more to do with the level of concentration involved. So a concentrated image that is consistent has no choice but to fill in. The grid is following you. The grid is following your forecasting, if you will. It's following your stories, your expectations, your emotions. So I'm not saying that you need to be specific, although that's fun, but even just setting the tone at play or enjoyment or pleasure is enough for the grid to fill in with things that match that.